Hello, everyone. It is our pleasure to welcome you to today's event, Looking Back and Moving Forward Together, Collective Action for an Equal Future on the last day of the Ungai at 20 Forum, Educate for Equality. This session is co-hosted by Ungai and UNESCO. Our names are Miriam and Nabal Rahman, and we are twin activists, journalists, filmmakers, and the co-founders of The World with M&R, a global nonprofit organization that works for gender equality, climate justice, and inclusivity through storytelling, advocacy, and development projects. Today's session will serve as a finale for the week, providing a retrospective look at girls' education across the past 25 years, as well as major outcomes of the week, and a forward-looking discussion and call to collective action. It will include short videos, interactive polls, and an intergenerational real talk discussion on what we need to do to keep girls in the picture, safeguard progress, and catalyze collective action through the Generation Equality Forum Action Coalitions and beyond. Now we'd like to welcome Nora Files, the head of Secretariat for the UN Girls Education Initiative, who will be sharing some of the highlights from the week.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm only going to pass it over to two young rapporteurs who have taken part in the Educate for Equality Forum over the last week, and will give us an update, rapporteur update of all that we've heard. So over to you, please.
Dream big. Hold on to that dream and believe that change is coming. Raise your voice and demand the global community to do better. I'm quoting Ms. Minna Kalha, the Vice Minister of Education in Finland, who spoke in the opening session in the Educate for Equality Forum.
So here we are.
Can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Dear global community, we're demanding you to do better.
Especially now, in times of uncertainty and crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, her words remind us to keep believing in and working towards a better future for gender equality in education. This past week, we have been inspired by advocates, experts, and leaders of all ages coming together to do just that. They shared their knowledge with us and through films and engaged with us in each of their perspectives in unscripted real talk discussions.
On Tuesday, we were taken through Sally Matu's journey to advance economic justice and rights for women and girls through education. In partnership with ActionAid and the Global Partnership for Education, this session taught us that economic justice is about more than just employment. It is about girls and women having their voice and agency to be partners and co-creators of their opportunities and their futures.
We also need education that positions women and girls to also be co-creators of value, to be in the knowledge sector of generating new thinking, new tools, new inventions, new patterns, that demands a different way of education.
In the Real Talk, Vivian Onano spoke of the importance of self-esteem for empowering girls to aspire to be who they want to be.
How do you build their confidence and self-esteem? How do you make sure that they feel like they belong in that class and they have a place in that class? Their voice matters in that class. That is the only way we are going to be able to help this girl transform into the leaders that they need to be.
This isn't often taught in the schools, but it's a critical ingredient if we want girls to gain the knowledge, skills, and agency to successfully enter the 21st century workforce and advance economic justice and rights.
Later that day, we looked at education and gender-based violence with Together for Girls and the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We learned that violence in and around schools has devastating consequences on the lives of millions of learners, teachers, and communities every year. Education also has the potential to end gender-based violence by tackling its root causes. But this can't be achieved through the education system alone. As Madeleine Kennedy McFoy of Education International stated,
unless the people in the community themselves start to find their own solutions, it won't be sustained, it won't be understood.
On Wednesday, we explored the transformative potential of education for bodily autonomy and SRHR and feminist action for climate justice with the help of our partners UNESCO, Youth Coalition, and ChemFat. Isabel and Yona, two leading youth activists working to promote CSE in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and globally, explained that bodily autonomy and SRHR should be promoted through a cohesive intergenerational action and through education.
Gender equality in education should be cross-cut in all platforms, both formal and non-formal. It should be normalized in the next 20 years so that sexuality education is part of our education systems.
The same can be said tackling the climate crisis. As Forget, a leading climate-smart agriculture entrepreneur and activist from Zimbabwe, puts it,
if a woman is gaining a ground in education, that means she's also gaining a ground in fighting climate change issues, gaining a ground in fighting global warming, which is also linked to climate change, gaining a ground to fight gender inequality.
Yesterday, we watched a film and real talk on technology and innovation with UNICEF and the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education. We learned that in an increasingly digital world, the best investment we can make is girls' quality STEM education. Why? Because if we can close the STEM gender gap, girls will become the technology makers and shapers of tomorrow.
So achieving, gender equality in STEM education will directly contribute to achieving gender parity across the board. So I think the main, message is that we must all take ownership of the problem and we must all be a part of creating the solution.
This was followed by an interactive workshop in partnership with Freedom. This spoke to me because I am a young activist.
So am I.
And I.
All of us learn how we can support resilience in young feminist organizing through politicizing care.
Thursday's events close with an inspiring session in feminist leadership and movements, co-hosted with Plan International and Global Affairs Canada. We often hear it said, education can empower girls to become feminist leaders and movement builders. Urvashi Sani, Study Health Foundation, offered some innovative ways to make this happen.
An education must have as its educational goal that girls learn to think of themselves as equal, autonomous persons deserving respect. We must understand that a discriminatory social structure, even if and a discriminatory family structure even,
progress isn't progress if it doesn't move fast enough.
That was a snippet from Asta, who took part in the Slam Out Loud Poetry Open Mic earlier today, amplifying the voices of poets from all over the world, calling for equality. This was our penultimate event from the Educate for Equality Forum. We have all raised our voices to demand change this week, loud and clear.
Looking back over this week makes us feel excited to move forward, starting today during this finale event with UNESCO.
Let us keep believing in and working for a better future for women and girls around the world. Let us continue to demand collective intergenerational action. Because as Ms. Mina Kelha said, we believe that change is coming and we won't stop until we are there, until you, dear global community, do better. Thank you for listening, and don't forget you can catch up on any missed events on e4e.ungai.org. And now, we are excited to share this message from the legendary Delphine O, Ambassador for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Secretary General of the Generation Equality Forum.
Education really is a transformative agent for gender equality, but there are many, many steps to take until we get there. We need to work all together. This might be obvious and sound obvious, and it is true in gender equality, in all sectors of gender equality, but it is all the more true when it comes to education. We have many, many very important stakeholders and players in the field. We have, of course, UN agencies, UNESCO, we have UNICEF, Ungai, we have the governments, we have the NGOs and the civil society organizations on the ground. We have the donors, we have the school systems and the ministries of education around the world. We need to be all working together. So I'm really glad that we have made education a centerpiece of the Generation Equality Forum, where it is cross-cutting again across the 6 action coalitions that we've created with governments, international organizations, private sector organizations, civil society organizations, youth-led organizations, and so on, in order to create a really concrete roadmap for the next 5 years in education, in gender-based violence, gender and climate, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and so on.
That was amazing. Thank you so much to everyone who helped contribute to such a powerful week. We would now like to invite you to take part in a short poll on some of the major themes covered this week during the Educate for Equality Ungayak 20 Forum. Over to Elspeth McOmish from UNESCO to introduce the poll with 3 questions.
Hi everyone, I'm very pleased to be joining you from UNESCO in Paris. So we have a quick poll that will test your knowledge of some of the major issues for girls' education today. In order to participate, could you please get your phone and go to www.menti.com, as you can see on the screen. Now, once you're on the page, so that's www.menti.com, please enter the code which is shown on the screen. For those who can't see it well, that's 6528691. 6528691. Okay, now the first question is, how many more girls are in school today than 25 years ago when the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action were adopted? So what do you think? Is it A, 180 million, B, 50 million, or C, 120 million? I can see the answers coming in. Interesting, people aren't sure. There are different, very different opinions coming up here. Any more coming? I see we still have some more people. I'll give you a few more seconds. Aha. Okay, I'll give you 3 more seconds while these come up. Okay, and how about we see the answer? The answer now actually is 180 million. So that's interesting that that's not what people were guessing. Now let's go on to the next question. Question 2. The lockdowns and school closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic have increased girls' experience of. I'll just check whether that's coming up. Yes. A, early and forced marriage. B, early and unintended pregnancy. C, gender-based violence. D, economic hardship. Or E, all of the above. Yeah, I can see the votes coming in. I think that any more? I think we have a trend here. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, let's see the answer. So the answer, most of you guessed it, was E, all of the above. Great, now our final question for this round. So this last question concerns the action coalitions that have been established within the context of the Generation Equality Forum, which is being convened by UN Women and co-hosted by Mexico and France, as you know. These coalitions bring together government, civil society, international organizations, and the private sector, and they're focusing on 6 themes with the aim of delivering game-changing results for women and girls. So for this one, you'll need a new code. So could you please go back to menti.com and enter in the new code, which is 26 10 86 5. That is 26 10 86 5. Great, and you'll see, I think I can see that some answers already coming in, but that the question is education. For those who can't read it, education is a cross-cutting lever of which action area or areas identified by the international community as essential for advancing gender equality? Is it A, gender-based violence, B, economic justice and rights, C, bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, D, feminist action for climate justice, E, technology and innovation, or F, feminist movements and leadership? You can tick all of the areas that you believe apply. I'll give you a few more moments to think about it. I can see a number of responses have come in, but I think we can get even a few more. I'll give you a few more seconds. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to the answer now. And the answer is, you guessed it, all of them. Education is indeed a cross-cutting lever of all of the action coalitions. So thank you very much for your participation, and we will ask you a fourth and final question at the end of this event. I'll pass over now to Miriam and Naval.
Thank you so much for organizing that poll. I'd now like to invite Victoria Ebiwoye to moderate our Real Talk. Victoria is the director of the One African Child Foundation for Creative Learning, a youth-led NGO addressing the inequality in education through experiential global citizenship education for low-income community children in Nigeria. She has won many awards for her advocacy efforts and her contributions to education, advocacy, and youth development.
Thank you very much, Miriam and Nival, for the very warm welcome. I'm so delighted to be here today, moderating this very interactive and engaging session. As we know, the theme of this year's International Day of the Girl is My Voice, Our Equal Future. To reimagine an equal future, we must first understand the world that girls are living in today and the world they imagine for tomorrow. We must catalyze collective action for and with girls. This is why all week and today, the UN Girls Education Initiative, UNGAI, has been amplifying the voices of girls who are sharing more about their world and their vision for an equal future through education, as well as what they are doing to make this happen. We are going to now start off our Real Talk session with the voices of two girls, Bati from Kenya and Miriam from Afghanistan. They will be sharing with us more about their experience of COVID-19 and their dreams for the future. I'd also like to mention that these videos were developed through UNESCO's Global Education Coalition, an advocacy campaign called Keeping Girls in the Future. Now let's watch the videos.
مریم یوسفی هستم. 17 سال عمر دارم. از کابل هستم. در فرز زندگی میکنیم. در وقتی که ما درس میخوانیم مشکلات زیادی داشتیم. مشکلات نام بودن راه، نام اجازه ندادن فامیل ما. ما بسیار خوشحال شدیم و اینجا آمدیم درس خوانیم. در یک سال دو صنف هم میخوانیم و امتحان میدیم. وقتی که امروز کووید 19 زندگی ما اومد ما بسیار متاثر شدیم و ما ناامن بودن از اینکه ما ناامن نیستیم در مثلا مکتب بریم با شاگردای جای درس بخونیم، با دوستای خود درس بخونیم، مطالعه میکنیم تا خوشمون میاد درس خوندن که با دوستا بشینیم و مطالعه کنیم که درس وقتی که ما با دوستا میشینیم درس میخوانیم بسیار خوش میباشیم که درس میخوانیم از درس خواندن لذت میبریم میگیم و اونا رو تشویق میکنیم که اونا مثل ما بتونن بخونن. نتونستیم درس بخونیم با وجود از اینکه ما مشکلات نام بودن راه و اجازه ندادن فامیل درس خوندن با دخترای جوان یا دخترای نوجوان نیمچه جوان که هستن برای زیاد مهم است به خاطر درس خوندن، به خاطر که میتونن با فامیل خود قبل از اینکه میکنه وقت تحصیل خود خلاص کنه یک جای بتونه وظیفه بگیره، دستش به فامیل دراز نباشه که در مشکل اقتصادی که اینا داشته باشن، میتونن هم با فامیل کمک کنن هم با خودش کمک کنن، میتونه با یک حمایتگر باشه. با دیگه دخترای نوجوان ما میخوایم که درس خود تمام کنه و همه قسم یک انسان شام تا با دیگه دخترها یک حمایتگر خوب باشه.
When I finish my school, I want to be a nurse so that I come to my community and I help them.
He walks for 40
At home, I'm learning through radio. I learn chemistry, maths, history. There is some local women group in our village, and since they see me always struggle to borrow neighbors' radio, they reported my problems to group, and so they went to buy for me a radio. These were my friends. I learn together during the radio lesson. I am mentoring them. The challenges that girls face due to closure of the school is like early marriages, early pregnancy, gender inequalities. I want to advise my families and other girls how they can focus in their life so that they can avoid all these challenges, and also so that they can focus on their schooling, because schooling can change their life.
Welcome back. Our real talk today will include 5 people representing different generations, different organizations, and different perspectives. You all know Nora Files, who is the director of the UN Girls Education Initiative Secretariat. We also have a speaker, Cheno Bar. Cheno joins us from Sierra Leone. Cheno is an acclaimed global advocate for education, a champion for girls, and an expert in international development. We also have Justin Saz. Justin leads a team at UNESCO supporting education for inclusion and gender equality. Also, we have Olaoluwa Abago. Olaoluwa is a Nigerian lawyer. She's a passionate girls' rights advocate, an unapologetic feminist who is currently serving as the coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Gender Equality Network. And finally, we have with us Yona Nestel, who as Plans International's Global Education Policy and Advocacy leads, UNGAI Steering Committee Chair, and a board member of the Global Partnership for Education, is helping to turn rhetoric on the transformative power of education into action and impact. Now let's kick off our interactive discussion. So we saw in the video the enormous disruption that COVID-19 is causing to girls, their families, and their communities, with the potential risk to their health and well-being, and also to their education. The international community is now mobilizing efforts to build back equal. But what does this really mean in practice? So I'm going to throw this question to Yona and also to Cheno. I'd like to ask for your opinion on what needs to change in education in order for it to be truly transformative and to support progress for gender equality.
Turner, did you want to go ahead, or did you want me to kick it off?
Why don't you do that? You go ahead and I'll follow you.
All right, thanks. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here today. So many people on this panel that are mentors and inspirations for my work, so it's a real honor. So, what is it going to take to build back equal? Well, first of all, a sense of urgency. And I think we're seeing that. We've heard that throughout this week. And especially young activists are really calling us to, redouble that sense of urgency and take it beyond rhetoric, because we've heard about a crisis in education for a long time now. We've heard about crisis in girls' education specifically, but we need to move that into real concrete action. We can't keep on coming to panels and coming to sessions and saying, if there's a crisis, there's a crisis. If there's a fire, you put it out. You don't wait for months and months and months. So that sense of urgency really needs to be transformed into action. And very importantly, for funding, it's critical right now. We're seeing austerity measures across the world. We're seeing budgets to education being reduced. And we know that budget cuts to social services, namely education and health, have a disproportionate negative impact on girls. The other thing I think we need right now is just a reminder about the purpose of education. We're in a critical moment in time where we need to use education as a powerful transformative tool that it is. We need to use education to further gender equality and gender justice, and not just see education, as a way to make people more competitive, right? Being competitive is not really a feminist principle. And yes, it's important that people gain the skills and competencies to gain meaningful work and labor, but young people need the skills to change the trajectory of our world and our planet right now. I feel like that needs to be reminded to the international community. And the last thing I just wanted to say is that we need a system level approach. We can't have a piecemeal approach to building back equal. We can't just, for example, build sex disaggregated latrines and check the box on the fact that, we're going to get more girls into school. Every part of the education system needs to become gender transformative, from curriculum, to teacher training, to textbooks. Every part works together to drive gender equality. And education systems need to work with other systems, health, protection. It's going to take a real multidisciplinary approach to build back equal.
Thank you for that, Yona, and I think I will follow that and start by saying it should be clear to us from the poll we just took that there's a lot wrong with our education system around the world. I think it's pretty clear. The experience of girls when it comes to education, despite the progress we've made in the past 20 years, and I know Nora and UNGI, you guys know too much about this, the problems are enormous. We cannot, I think the very notion of building back equal, better, means what we've been doing over time has not worked. We need a true revolution in education. And I'll just touch on I think Yona made a point about a complete overhaul. First, it's about, follow the money. Where's the money? For too long, girls' education has been the stepchild, if not the unknown child, in the global education financing system. In the global financing system, it's still treated as an afterthought. And including in this crisis, when we talked about education, when we talk about girls' education, people treat it as some kind of luxury. But we have to understand that it is the be-all and end-all. And I think one big thing that needs to change is we can no longer be arguing about funding for education. We need to completely transform, as you said, how we teach. We've seen from one crisis to another, and I come from Sierra Leone where we've been through different forms of crisis. It's now becoming predictable that the traditional forms of teaching, of a teacher standing in front of a class and all the ways we do it, does not work. And if we're building back equal, and by the way, this traditional form, historically, I think neglects and leave girls behind because we do not have enough teachers, we do not have enough qualified teachers. We need to find a way to basically change the ecosystem so that we can equalize. And then I will say what we teach. It's not just about providing and producing students and be like, 180 new students are in school and girls are in school, 80 million girls are in class. But that's not enough, because the point of education is to transform society. And we still live in worlds that are not only patriarchal, but where girls' experience and their everyday experience is one of oppression and violence. Until we're equipping girls with the way we teach and how we teach and who teaches to go after that system and radically change that system, making sure that feminist principles and feminism is no longer kind of like a scare word, but it's at the heart and soul of the way we teach and how education. And I think one of the videos mentioned STEM and technology and all of those things. So I think everything needs to change. What, how, who, and everything we do about education needs to change. And it needs to change now.
Agree more with what you just said, Channel, and also to Yona. We are talking now about building back equal, but something I've been seeing on social media is also building back better. So the quality of our education also is very important. And Yona talked about systems perspective. When we look at issues affecting girls, there is no one way, to address them. There are multiple levels of challenges that girls face in different parts of the world. So we really do need to look at things from a systems perspective. And that brings me to my next question, targeted to Ola and also to Justin.
Sorry, can I jump in before you go to the next question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I wanted to rebound or bounce off of two themes of both of the speakers, and one is about the way that we teach, and I think that Cherna was really speaking about pedagogy and how we interact with students in classroom. But I think we've also had this whole other new way of teaching during COVID-19, which is this move towards online learning and blended approaches to learning, and really trying to reach students while schools are closed in different ways to education. And there's a lot of conversations right now about how this blended approach teaching might actually be useful and maybe continued in the future. So even when kids come back into school, that we might continue to try to teach them through online methods. And I think we have to think about who was able to access that learning during this period. So we've seen 500 million students during the school closures weren't able to access some of these remote learning opportunities, and many of them were girls because of differential access to technologies. And even when you have access to the internet in the home, who gets to use it? It often isn't girls. So I think when we're looking at what has to change in education and the changes that will happen in education, I think we also have to really look at this sort of these other players that are involved in the delivery of education and how we make sure we close some of those gaps. And the last thing I wanted to say, which is something that we haven't really spoken about yet, but is that often we're talking about now how to make sure that we bring people back into the system. So how do we bring those girls back, and who might we lose, and how many girls might not come back? But I think we have to recognize that we still, before COVID, had 130 million girls that were not in school. And so part of building back equal is also making sure that we're not just bringing back those that were already in the system back into schools, but we really take an approach that tries to bring everybody back, and that all really means all. So a really inclusive approach. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Would any of the speakers like to jump in? Yona, please.
Maybe just to quickly say that we developed actually a guidance called Build Back Equal with UNESCO and UNGAI and UNICEF and the Malala Fund. And as we were developing that package, in fact, all the recommendations and the guidelines were not specific to COVID, right? And to Justine's point about, we need approaches that will ensure that, every girl is able to return to school, learn, thrive, graduate, and, be in a world where she's valued and respected and is able to be a leader. I mean, it's not much different. The recommendations and the guidelines aren't really that much different for COVID. So definitely agree with Justine, is that building back equal goes beyond just a response to COVID. It's an opportunity for us to capture all the girls that were being excluded before this crisis started.
Just a really quick comment. Some people are also talking about replacing this building back language, which gives us the impression that maybe we had something great to begin with, but in fact, we are recreating something else. So I think we need to follow on to Cherner's call to action and say, okay, what do we want to see that's truly different? Because we're not going back to what we had before wasn't enough, wasn't reaching those girls, as Justine just said, wasn't providing the space we really want to see. So the building back, which was extremely useful to us variously over the last 6-8 months, we need to start also thinking about different vocabulary as we talk about the next cycle of work that we have to do.
Thank you. And absolutely, those are all valid points. So that brings me to my next question, directed to Ola. And Ola, you work very actively at the grassroots in Nigeria, and also you bring also to this discussion global perspective with your role with Hygiene, and also to Justin bringing global perspective, particularly in education policy with your role with UNESCO. So my question to you both, and maybe Ola, you can go first, is what commitments can we all make to safeguard progress on girls' education and to ensure that cross-sectoral and intergenerational collaboration is at the core of our work?
Okay, first of all, I have to say that I'm super excited about being here. I've been loving the conversation so far. And I love the fact that we're coming to commitment, because as an advocate, I know that a lot of the times thoughts and strategies don't always transform to action. So it's always important that we hammer on the commitments that we need to make. So first of all, I'm speaking from my perspective as someone who came into advocacy as a 13-year-old adolescent girl. I know what joining the Nigerian Children's Parliament was for me. I know what it did to my voice. I know what it did to my self-worth, my sense of agency. And so I think that one commitment that we need to make is to keep girls' voices at the front. I say this because we think about it, we want to do it, but a lot of times it is more expensive, it is more time consuming, it is difficult, to keep girls' voices, particularly adolescent girls' voices, at the front of decision making that affects their education, that affects their lives, that affects everything around their communities. And I think this is one commitment we need to make, because we would always have something more to do in terms of putting girls' voices at the front. So I would implore all of us in all our spheres of influence, our pockets of influence, to ensure that we're constantly checking to see how we can amplify girls' voices more in decision making. And more specifically, I would say I would encourage people of the older generation to give up power. Power is very, very enjoyable, but it is most enjoyable when it is shared, particularly with those who are coming behind us. And in that sense, I would like us to ask ourselves, who do we refer to as experts in girls' education, in building policy, in implementing programs? Who are we referring to as experts? Are we ensuring that younger girls who are coming behind us are also, their expertise is also recognized in the system, in the conversations we're having? And finally, I would say that we need to be more holistic about girls' rights. So we can no longer afford to have a girls' education agenda on Monday, a gender-based violence agenda on Tuesday, an SRHR agenda on Wednesday, something else on Thursday, on Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday we self-care as the amazing advocates that we are. I mean, I think that we need to start looking at girls' rights as a bundle of rights if we really want to sustain the progress we've made. So we can't talk about girls' education without talking about sexuality education. We can't talk about girls' education without talking about their participation in governance. A whole lot of other issues, which I know that Generation Equality really hammers on, like we see in the videos that were shown earlier. So I would say that is particularly why my organization, both at Girl Pride Circle and at the Commonwealth Youth Gender Equality Network, this is why we really, really love to engage with UNGAI and are part of the UNGAI partnership, because UNGAI has shown us that it is indeed possible to look at girls' education from a very holistic lens, to look at SRHR, to look at other issues that are critical to girls' lives and girls' decision-making. So I would say that these three commitments are very, very important for us. Put girls' voices at the front, give up your power, and lastly, look at girls' rights more holistically, even beyond girls' education.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I wasn't entirely clear about the technological ways to come in. That's a very hard statement to follow after what Ola just had to say, because I think she really has absolutely said it all. I mean, I think what I would add to it is I really think 2020, I mean, all of us can reflect on just what a absolutely astounding year this has been. We thought we would be celebrating 25 years of progress, these gains that we heard about earlier. And we have been, I mean, obviously 180 million more girls in school. We've moved from, I think it's something like 15% of women that were in higher education in 1995 to 40% that are in now, and with women now numbering men in higher education. There's a lot to celebrate. But COVID obviously has put a whole new lens on this situation, and we have serious risks of having a fallback. And so I think we do need to look at commitments and really think about how do we continue to push this transformative agenda that we had with Beijing to really kind of a new realization. And so we thought today we would have already had the Generation Equality Forum, and we wouldn't have this week been thinking about how to input into it. So there's a lot of kind of it's a strange situation, I guess I'm trying to say. For UNESCO, I'd like to say, just in terms of commitments, because I think I can make a commitment on the behalf of my institution as well as make a personal commitment, which is I think really what we all need to do right now. So for UNESCO, I can commit that we will continue to try to do what is the theme of this session today, which is really try to catalyze joint action, look at cooperation. Victoria, you referred to earlier this Global Education Coalition. What is it? It's this mechanism that we established in March, which now has over 150 different members. It's got some of the tech companies that are looking at the digital connectivity. We've got multilateral organizations that are looking at cooperation in different areas. We've got civil society. We've got the media. We've got, we're really trying to see across these different sectors, how can we work together? How can we leverage the skills of one partner with another? Most of the people on the call today are part of that coalition, and how can we amplify the voices like we heard earlier today in the videos of Mariam and Betty. So so as an institution, I believe commit that we'll continue to make efforts to ensure that learning never stops. We'll continue to try to bring together different organizations working across sectors, and ensuring youth leadership helps us inform the actions that we're doing and the work that's moving ahead. And I think all of us need to not only look at what our organizations can do, but what is our own personal commitment. And my personal commitment will continue to be a passionate, committed voice for gender equality, an advocate for girls. I think I will continue to look at how can I help support mentorships and other opportunities, to build up youth leadership, and how can I learn from young people and help that learning inform my work as a parent. I will continue to support the education and work with teachers to make sure that we've got this sort of equal future inside of education, and continue to work as a committed community activist.
Right. Can I jump in quickly on commitments? Because it's not often I get a chance to say you should follow the example of Sierra Leone. The government of Sierra Leone is maintaining that it will continue to spend at least 20% of our budgets on education, including in this crisis and in the post-crisis. It's a remarkable commitment. As a Sierra Leone activist myself, I spend one of the things I do for a living is to call out and condemn on government and push them to do better. But I tell you what, this is one thing. It's a commitment that must be applauded, and I think other countries as well ought to do. Is at this critical time, the commitment ought to be that we maintain funding for education. In fact, increase funding for education. But also, it's not just that you're putting on the big money, but where's the money going to? So what parts of education are you funding? That differentiation is absolutely critical. Making sure you're getting rid of oppressive policies like we just did in Sierra Leone, where we ended the policy that bans pregnant girls from school. And now we have a radical inclusion policy that I'm very proud my organization Purposeful is being part of, not just driving, but also writing new policy going forward. Well, making sure as well that you're removing every barrier that is keeping girls from school, that's keeping other children in the poorest communities as well from school. So that level of investment in education, and I think one thing we've not talked about, I just want to say as well, is, before this call, I was just in the rural areas. And for a lot of girls as well, it's about money. It's the economy, making sure that our education system as well teaches girls financial literacy and helps to create financial independence. Because no matter how much we invest to, if girls do not have these tools financially to be able to have some independence, we will not have true liberation. And that's what education ought to do. So I think those are important commitments as well to call out.
Just want to build on Cherner, and absolutely Sierra Leone is such a leader. I have the honor of sitting on the Global Partnership for Education's board with Minister Senge, who's brought so much energy to the GPE with his radical inclusion agenda, and is inspiring other governments, and it's been incredible to watch. But I just wanted to pick up on something Ola said, and because this is a real talk, I'm going to keep it pretty real on giving up power. Again, we have to go beyond rhetoric. I've often seen people saying, "Oh, well, I'm giving up my power for this girl to, say something at this big event." That's not enough. Okay, we need to make sure that girls and young women are systematically included in policymaking spaces. So on the board of the GPE, on the board of the World Bank, not just as not necessarily as an advisory body, like at the table in policy discussions and making decisions. So I don't necessarily have a commitment. I'm obviously very committed. I've worked alongside young people for many, many years, to further this call to action, but just wanted to amplify again today for those who are watching, that giving up your power is not just for a day or for an hour at, some big event. It's actually creating space for girls and young women to actually be part of policy making decisions.
Thank you, Yona. Thanks to everyone who has spoken. Ola, Justin, Chenna, thank you. You've all made really valid points. Something that I'd like to add is also my participation at the Global Education Forum on Inclusion in Cali, in Colombia last year. I thought that was really a great example of intergenerational collaboration. There was a youth segment of the forum, and it was highly inclusive. It was young people really at the forefront, really having a say. It was young people really sharing their own first-hand story. It wasn't just they talking about groups they represent, but sharing their own story, how they've been impacted by education. And of course, I was one of the speakers there. So when Ola was saying, keeping girls at the forefront, and sometimes that can be really expensive, but the impact that makes, it's truly transformative. So that's a call to all the big partners on this call, to UNESCO, to Plan International, to UNGAI. You all are leading the forefront of ensuring that young people have a voice. So hopefully that's something that will be continuous. It will just be a one-off engagement, which I know it isn't. So it's like a call to keep doing the good job that you're all doing. So I would move on to the next question here. And my question would be directed to Nora. And my question is, why is it important to bring together the feminist and education movements to advance the rights of women and girls? And what opportunities could the current context provide to advance these partnerships?
Thanks very much. A really important question, and one which we've all touched on over the day and through the week. Over and again, people have spoken about the critical importance of no one sector working alone, no organization, no individual. Just thinking about what each of these two movements bring to each other was my starting point of thinking about the question you were going to pose to me. And together they provide a really powerful partnership for a sustainable future. Now, but they also really need each other to be effective. Feminism, while education has its political power, people who want to talk about power in politics, such as Paulo Freire, who was very foundational in my thinking many years ago when I was a young student in university and has continued to play a really powerful role in our thinking and our critical questioning of what we use education for. Feminism really brings the politics of change and social justice to education. Consciousness, recognition of inequalities and the intersecting nature of inequality, which must be addressed for us to make a difference, must be dismantled for us to achieve this education and this change in gender equality which we're seeking. Now, this is really a bit of a challenge for education, who, as a sector, we get stuck in these rules and policies and down to the depths of, learning assessment and data, and oh my goodness, the details can just about kill you. And we lose track of the politics of the thing where it's all about power. Ola said, how do we share this power? Yona spoke about it as well. Education systems aren't good at that. We have hierarchical systems. Classrooms have one person at the front talking, and you listen to that person often. Now we're trying to break that down. But the feminist movement puts at the heart of their work power and discussion of that, and recognizes that's critical. If we don't talk about those politics, we're not going to move ahead. And we seek consciousness of that. We don't shy away from her. I can call ourselves part of that movement. We choose not to shy away from those hard decisions, those hard topics, those areas like talking about bodies, talking about rights, talking about economics, talking about who should and who doesn't. Well, feminists are really, really okay about that. And the education movement hasn't been there. So we learn a lot from our feminist movement sisters and brothers. Feminism also brings us to the how we do our education. And I want to bring us back again to that classroom. The feminist movement really championed collaboration, coming together, joining in groups. Long ago, people pointed fingers and what's with these women's groups, these discussions, etc. We have so much to learn about the feminist principles and applying those to education, to listening, to dismantling leaders who lead just for themselves and for others, and dismantling that and allowing for that leadership to be shared, for collaborative spaces, for participatory engagement. And that is also a challenge to education. We have much to learn, different ways of working together and learning from each other. The feminist movement also calls us back to the family, to the reality of the lives of women and girls, and to the fundamental cross-sectoral nature of those lives. Fran, I forget now who spoke about the fact that we don't have, I think Ola, you said, it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have a different part of a girl's life. It is fundamentally cross-sectoral, and we cannot just look at what goes on in the classroom. We must see the girl in her context. The family is critical to changing those expectations, those rights and opportunities for girls, which have a serious impact on whether or not they go to school, stay in school, and see themselves as learners and as valuable, dignified people who can take good decisions and move forward. So education is an awful lot to learn from the feminist movement. Now, education is the premier platform for women to acquire those skills and competencies they're looking for to step into their lives with expertise. But we also have heard today, and Turner called it out pretty loud and clear, unless we transform this education system, it will not be transformative. And it's about breaking down those gender norms, which tell girls that they aren't really quite up to it. They really shouldn't be studying math because, after all, don't you know? Yeah, well, we have to change those. We have to change the gender norms which allow gender-based violence to happen within that classroom, or on the way to, or in the on the basketball court, or whatever it is. That is not on. We cannot. It is not acceptable. Those norms must change. So, and many other things, as we have spoken about, education is not. We cannot maintain what we have now. However, the two do need to work together, learn from each other. I think it's the one thing that this week has really reinforced for us is the centrality of education in this gender equality agenda, and how much we have to learn from those two movements in order to move ahead this big global agenda.
Nora, please go ahead. Yona, sorry. Yona.
It's okay, it happens all the time.
You both sound similar names, sound similar.
Yes, it's true. So yeah, Nora mentioned Paulo Freire, and of course Paulo Freire said that there is no such thing as neutral education, right? Education is always political, and it can either reinforce the status quo and systems of oppression, or it can liberate us from those systems. And I think we need to acknowledge that things like high stakes testing, assessments, hierarchies within our education system, bureaucracy, that is political. It's advancing a political patriarchal agenda, right? So we need to actively dismantle that. And when we talk about infusing feminist principles into education systems, we need to look at, you know, the fact that most of education systems are built upon the principles of patriarchy. And how can you undo that? And how can you unlearn that? You know, I spoke about this topic at yesterday's session. And, you know, many of us have been working on gender equality in education for many, many years. But I don't think we've really leveraged feminist frameworks and principles and applied them to our work. You know, gender equality and, you know, the gender equality kind of discourse and narrative is different than the feminist discourse and narrative, right? It's not necessarily the same thing. Feminist discourse is much more radical, I find, than kind of the gender equality discourse. So let's recognize what exactly is going on here, that the current systems that we have are political, but they're advancing, from my perspective, obviously, a negative political agenda, which is patriarchy and other forms of oppression, white supremacy, you know, capitalism. Exactly. I mean, these, you need to call it out, and you need to stop pretending like it's something, you know, that we're starting from a neutral place. We're not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if I can just have a word in, for me, this transformation we're talking about has to be feminist. One of the challenges we've always had in education, especially in girls' education, is we've not had a movement building lens sufficiently to this work. We have not recognized that we're in a war, we're in a battle. It's a political, it's an ideological, it's a social battle, and that the status quo continues to fight against us. And the worst war you can be in is when you're fighting against a system that's way more powerful, way more well-funded than you, and you are not aware that you are in a war. And we just thought, oh, education, it's so blasé, it's so simple, everybody should have it. No, we have to understand, as we've said before, it's not just that you want to get kids into school and create functional people, but you got to fight against and deconstruct this entire system of patriarchy and oppression that currently exists. And you can only do that when you come in as well with an affirmative social, political, and ideological agenda and lens. And that's what the feminist movement is about. For us at Purposeful, we actually see no distinction between the feminist agenda and the education agenda, because we believe that until those two are one, our liberation is not complete, because we need both absolutely and desperately for girls' lives to be free and for girls to be able to live their full potential.
And Victoria, may I just add, Turner, this is such a powerful statement, and we've got such a big uphill battle here because this is new. Yona has called it out that, we haven't considered ourselves feminist. Maybe, Purposeful is a very special organization. We celebrate that, and really glad you can be with us today. And in fact, the young people who we work with, who actually are leading a whole lot of the work of Ungai's, Ungai's agenda is really being led by young people. They are not afraid to call that out and say, we must speak about feminist principles we must recognize those as critical to our work. But it's a pretty tiny little voice here, and we have a big community to influence. So taking this on and speaking well about it, the positive contribution of the feminist principles to the effectiveness of the education system, moving us ahead where we want to go, dismantling indeed, but for good reason, in order to make positive change. We're going to have to be really clever and strategic about how we move it ahead. And again, learn from the feminist movement. They have figured it out. So what do we have to learn from that? And make that part of our agenda and our toolbox in order to make this change that we're really needing to see.
Thanks, Nora. You know, as you were speaking, what came to mind was just looking at where we were like a decade or two ago. I still remember I wasn't part of it, but I've learned a lot about the history of Sierra Leone, the civil war in Sierra Leone, and the role that women played in fighting for, you know, liberation, and just thinking of how far we've come because of the feminists, you know, who stood up to fight for the right of this generation and the ones to come, and that's really incredible. I can also see, you know, Yona's backdrop, Black Lives Matter, and you know, when we talk about issues like police brutality, it touches on so many things. It touches on education. It touches on, you know, so many angles, and many of you touched on all of those things, and that also connects to what's going on right now in Nigeria. The country is experiencing, you know, police brutality, and young people are standing up to say that we are tired of all of this brutality and we want that to end. So there's like a strong youth movement calling for all of this, you know, patriarchal system that we're talking about, calling for them to be dismantled and for power to be given to those who truly deserve power. So that's what all of you have touched on today, and that's very, very inspiring. Yeah, let me move to the next question that I have for Ola and Yona. So we've heard throughout the week and today about young people's involvement in COVID-19 response, and also in the Generation Equality Forum Action Coalitions. I want to ask you, Ola, and then Yona, how are young people already taking action to ensure an equal future, and what is needed to further advance this?
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're talking about this today, because it's something that I've seen, I've experienced as a young advocate myself. Young people really pushing the boundaries and making their way in spaces that are not traditionally for young people. I would like to draw an example from the Commonwealth Youth Gender Equality Network. And just a few months ago, we started a campaign called the Reform 53 campaign. And through this campaign, we want to ensure that in every of the 54 Commonwealth countries, we do not have any law or policy that discriminates against women and girls. So, for instance, in countries like Nigeria, in many African countries, you see that there are laws against child marriage, formal laws against child marriage, but child marriage still continues, and it keeps a lot of girls out of school because the customary systems allow it. So we need to bring our customs in conformity with the laws to ensure that all of us are truly equal, wherever you look at it, from what angle you look at it. Again, I would like to piggyback on your contribution on the current youth uprising, youth revolution that I choose to call it, happening here in Nigeria. So it's interesting that Nigerian young people are kicking against police brutality, but the organization and the movement at the forefront of this revolution is a feminist coalition. So there's a feminist coalition in Nigeria made up of young Nigerian women who have been raising money for this movement. In less than a week, they've raised over $150,000 to fund the movement, so that the movement can continue to be unbiased. It will not be infiltrated by other people who want to hijack it for their own sole benefit. So I would say that young people have proved time and time again that we have everything it takes. And what do we really need to continue to sustain this? we need that strong intergenerational angle to it, because I've been listening to a lot of conversations around young people mobilizing, and what some people have to say is how young people are not adopting the right strategies, how we need to sit back and learn from the older generation, how we're too forward. But I think what we really need is the support, a friendly hand that is stretched from the older generation to say, yes, we want to work with you. We want you to learn from us, but we also want to learn from you. Sort of meeting in the middle to ensure that we are truly intergenerational. Another thing that I think is really, really important is for funding to be channeled to youth-led movements. I mean, it's sad that young people are doing so much with so little. Every time I experience it, leading a grassroots girls' rights organization myself in Nigeria, I experience it a lot. You know, sometimes young people cannot even advance careers because of this important work that we continue to do. And there's like limited funding, so much competition, and it's not supposed to be so. There's supposed to be an atmosphere of collaboration. But because the funding is so limited in the youth advocacy space, you find that competition is what is the order of the day at times. So I think that we need to be more vocal about channeling money, putting our money where our mouths are. It's not enough for us to say that we want youth-led organizing, we want youth-led action. We also need youth-led funding, you know. So that's really critical for me when I look at the work that young people continue to do around creating a more equal future.
Everything Ola said. I mean, let me think about what else I can contribute here. You know, as UNGAI Steering Committee Chair, we've had a focus on youth for the last couple of years, and we've been working with the amazing Youth Advisory Committee that's being coordinated by Natasha Harris-Harb, who's UNGAI's youth coordinator. And I've seen a massive transformation in our network. I don't think we would have been able to have this kind of conversation 2 years ago. It's the energy and really that sense of urgency that young people bring to this work, to say, hey, listen, stop beating around the bush, you bunch of bureaucrats. Like, let's call it what it is. Let's talk about feminism. I mean, and also, like, which one of our organizations, and I'm talking about my organization as well, would have called ourselves a feminist organization 3 years ago? That was risky, right? That was considered risky. We don't want to call ourselves a feminist organization because maybe some of the governments that give us money or some of the countries that we work in might, you know, think less of us. And it was really through working with young people that said, listen, don't be afraid. You got to go there. If you're really authentically looking to make transformation and to advance girls' rights and girls' education, you gotta take the leap. You gotta take the risk. And so I don't think that would have been possible without the kind of urging of young activists, and we owe the young people that we work with, we owe them such a you know, a debt of gratitude. And to Ola's point about financing, when we ask young activists, so what do you need from an organization like Plan International? They say money, resources. We cannot continue to do this work on a voluntary basis. We can't help you transform your own organization on a voluntary basis because we are giving up opportunities to advance our own careers. And I've worked with many young activists over the years that put in blood, sweat, and tears for nothing really in return, you know, besides kind of helping to advance their own kind of passions and you know, commitments to the cause. So we need to actually pay young people for this work, right? It cannot continue to be like, oh, hey, you know, young activists, we're giving you this great opportunity to help us transform our organization. No, it's like, we're going to pay you because this, you know, you're providing a service for us. You're helping us transform the sector. You're helping us transform our organization. Mm-hmm. So that's my contribution.
Sorry, I mean, I have to jump in here because you're talking about funding in young people and girls. One of the things I'm very, very proud of at Purposeful is actually, it's the heart and soul of what we do. Some of you know that during this COVID, we launched the Global Resilience Fund, which has given money to over 70 girl-led groups across the world, formal and informal unregistered groups. In Sierra Leone, We're now combining all our global funding portfolios into one fund. We're calling the Wheaton for Girls Fund. And we're now switching to primarily only funding girls and girl-led groups. And they don't have to be registered. They don't have to be formalized. They are no longer eliminated by what they told us before, is elimination by complexity. You need paperwork, you need this. We're funding informal groups in communities, girls coming together and forming SAN collective and things like that. And people always ask us, is it not so risky? How do you report to your donors? And we say simply, girls are worth the risk. No matter what all these other organizations have done historically, they're still corrupt. They still give money to these big multilateral organizations, and they all waste the money anyway, and it doesn't reach the girls. And it's the very essence of a system that continues to replicate itself and keeps girls away from power. And we are Purposeful are very, very proud that over the past few years, we've been experimenting with this on a small scale, and we're now blowing this out of proportion. Almost all of our funding now is going to be directly to girls and girl-led groups, and we invite other people to do that, other groups to do that, and it's a commitment we're making. This is what we'll do both here in Sierra Leone and around the world with our global funds.
That's really impressive, Turner, and we got to learn more about that, how you do it, and you know, we're just going to be your best friend now to try to find out how you're doing that. I think funding is the big frontier for us, for Ongai. We've definitely given away the power and control and let the youth-led organizations step in big time to tell us where we should be doing, how we should be engaging, taking on their creativity and our artwork and our design. I mean, we now have bigger investments in all the social media than we ever thought we would be doing, and to allow youth to lead all that. What we have discovered, though, and Turner, you mentioned this, is to fund youth-led and to engage with youth-led organizations, not simply individuals who don't have the depth of connectivity with communities and with numbers of people, so that they can draw on the strength of that. Working with with youth is different. We must make sure they're well supported in what they're doing, and don't have expectations they're going to show up at a meeting and say, oh yeah, I know what we're talking about here, because they haven't been involved, or they don't use that vocabulary, or their agenda is going to be much shorter, a shorter time period, where whatever it is, we must support them, we must invest in that. It's a different way of working, and I think recognizing this movement nature of youth work is critical. Instead of taking out an individual and saying, oh, aren't they wonderful? Although we did that with you, Turner, years ago with the Jeffy experience, and we bless Jeffy for giving us Turner Baugh in that way. We can't go there. We can't. We must build the movement. Youth-led organizations is the way to go. And the ones we've become associated with are those who have feminism at the core.
Can I just jump in? I mean, I think it's so inspirational to hear what Turner just said, and to agree with Yona that I'm sure we have a lot to learn from you, and I'm really keen to hear how that goes. I wanted to say that, I mean, this is also 20 years of celebrating Ungai, and I would like to say that I think Ungai has really pushed the partnership to think about how we engage with young people, and really pushed our organizations to meaningfully engage young people in the leadership structures and in all of our work. So kudos to Ungai for really helping us, I think, all think through how to do this work better. And then I wanted to just pick up on a theme that came in the first video, which was talking about the retrospective of a week. I think it was Philippe who said something about amplifying voices, and I think it's also really thinking about, how are we holding the microphone or the megaphone or turning up the volume or investing in those tools, so that we are helping to amplify the voices, to making sure that people are being heard, and that there are other people are listening, and that we're really acting on what it is that we're hearing. So I really like that theme of amplifying voices.
Wow, if Zoom had the function to upvote, I think like everything you all have said should be upvoted 1 million times and more. It's just so inspiring. listening to everything that you've said. And yeah, I hope that would really, truly take note of everything that is being shared, and it would move forward just from this real talk that we are having to become more action oriented. Something I want to say though is one of the questions was, how are young people already taking action to ensure an equal future? And like Justin said, UNGA is really taking the lead in that. One African Child is also part of UNGA's youth advocacy group. And I know that at every opportunity possible, Natasha and the rest of the colleagues are constantly engaging us. What do you think about this? We want you to have a say, even when it comes to opportunity to apply for a joint grant. Young people are put at the center, and that's really meaningful. But we need to also make it strategic, like Cheno and Yona said, to engage young people, not just like, oh, we want to gather your perspective as young people, but also to engage youth agency as experts. A lot of young people, we have the lived experience, but also we need something to sustain us. And just coming on and sharing our experience is not going to be sustainable in the long term. So we need more ways to be supported, to do the work that we love to do the most. And of course, I know that UNESCO, UNGA, Plan International, they are doing their best, but let's keep the ball rolling in that regard. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience, because we can probably take a question or two. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just move to the final question, which is addressed to all the speakers. And my question to you is, what would the world look like if we put gender equality at the heart of education? What would the world look like if we put gender equality at the heart of education? So whoever wants to go first, please unmute and take the floor.
So I'm excited by that world. I think that world would be one where we're all empowered, we make space for each other, and we bring our best to the table. There's like an enabling environment for everyone to bring their best to the table.
Yona?
I think that world is desperately needed right now. I mean, we are really at a crossroads right now. I mean, COVID-19 has cracked open any illusion that we're safe, right? Our humanity, our planet is at grave risk. And I think we need education that's feminist. We need to be incubating a generation of feminists that are just going to turn this trajectory around. So like Ola, I'm excited by that. That really is what keeps me going in these times, right? The fact that, we do have young activists and young people around the world that are not going to accept the trajectory that we're on right now. And can I just say, we need more real talk. This has been so inspirational. And can we just change like the format of every meeting or every panel from this point on and just have this kind of real talk? Because it kind of just peels back the layers of, blah, 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 and gets us to the heart of the matter. And we need that urgency. We need to get to the heart of the matter. So my vote is for more real talk.
I agree, yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the urgency is what we would see different. And the problem solving at the core of education, because feminists have been making pretty short agendas for change, like we need to do this like now and tomorrow, and not this long-term 12 years. It's an awfully long investment in waiting until you've got the skills and competencies to get on with your life. I've always thought that, whenever girls leave school, they need to have the ticket to move on to whatever they're going to do. They need to have enough competencies to get going. And could we not start putting problem solving at the core from the beginning, and all these other agendas of bodily autonomy right center from the beginning, at the right time, with the right content, of course, but not wait till some future moment when it might be deemed appropriate. So what are the critical issues of the day which must be on the table? And those should be the heart of education. And were that to be the case, we might be solving these problems as we would go along, rather than wait till we get PhDs and then we become experts and then we get solutions. So I'm also for addressing, picking up this urgent agenda and moving it a lot faster than we would otherwise.
Victoria, I want to leave Cherna with the last words because I'm sure it will be enormously inspirational. I feel like the world would be a little bit less wobbly, a little bit less unstable. Schools would obviously be safer. They'd have the infrastructure that would meet every child's needs. The teachers would be engaging with all the learners in the classroom equally. All learners will believe in their abilities and believe that any pathway, including STEM, is possible for them. And I think that, I don't think that immediately we're going to see that world happen, but I do think that is such a critically important catalyst for us to see those changes that we've heard about in society. So healthy relationships, less violence, more equal pay, finally, hopefully in the workforce, more equal sharing of domestic tasks in the home, more equal voices in the decision-making spaces, more peace, less conflict, and I can only agree that this would clearly be a place that I'd like to live in.
Well, thank you for that, Justin, because now I have nothing left to say, because I think you just said everything that was on my mind. But I think one last thing I'll add to that is that world will look a lot more like this panel, in a lot more boardrooms, political UN sessions, leadership meetings will look a lot more like this panel, where we'll have real diversity, where we'll have women who are leading and showing the way and demonstrating what this world needs, and lead with empathy and with wisdom. And we'll have, as you said, more happiness and true liberation. And I think the important thing, really, I always say as a feminist man, that the important thing about the world we seek as feminists is that it's a world where women can live and will live in their full power, but we will all be free in that world as well. It's not a world that seeks to bring a new form of oppression, but it's to liberate us all by liberating girls and women. And that's a world that's, I think we can all be excited by.
Thank you, Chenar. Thank you to all of our amazing speakers. This is truly, truly, truly inspiring. You've all said that we need a sense of urgency to transform education. I also heard that we need accountability in financing education. We need to follow the money. You've all said that we need to put girls at the forefront of education, and also to engage young people as experts, moving beyond tokenism. I've also heard that we need to engage girls and women more systematically, including in policy making. And finally, to your point, Nora, you said that feminism is relevant because it brings out the politics of social change to education. I couldn't agree more with all that you've all shared. Thank you so much for such an engaging and interactive panel session. To what Yona said, we need more and more of real talks. So now we'll go back to our poll with one final question.
Hi everyone, it's Elspeth again. So we started the event with a poll, and we're going to end with a final question for you. So I think it's come up on the screen now. In one word, name an action that we must take to accelerate an equal future through education. Now, in order to do this, you need to go back to menti.com and use the code 5203072. And you should be able to enter 2 words. So I think, following the inspiring conversation that we just heard, I think we're all going to have many, many words that we would want to enter. I'm personally going to put, I think, liberate, which I think came out, and dare. We'll see. I can see some other ones are coming in as well. You can see as words are coming in. I've got I can see amplify, which Justine mentioned, obviously a lot around funding. Radical, yes, absolutely. Transform, diversity, invest, inspire, uplift, inclusion, power. I think power came out multiple times during the discussion. Feminist, absolutely. Intergenerational and youth leadership. Equity, uplift, inspire, which I think has happened to all of us today. Act now, that's a nice one too. I see more and more words coming in. So given the time limits, what I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage you to keep on submitting words. And in the meantime, I'm going to pass back to the moderators so that they can sum up.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who participated in the finale Real Talk discussion for the Ungai at 20 Forum. There were such important insights shared about the work being done for education and the job we have left to do as education transformers, advocates, and change makers. We hope that this past week gave you inspiration and encouraged you to not only learn more about the status of girls' education and the work being done by amazing organizations on the ground, but also find out more about how you can get involved. With that, I now pass the floor back to Nora Files for her concluding remarks. Nora will be accompanied in this by Kutazo, who is a 19-year-old gender justice activist from South Africa, who is part of a global youth-led movement, Transform Education, that is hosted by Ungai.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak very briefly, just because so much has been said. I wanted to recognize that, since Ungai's been around for a long time now, 20 years. And we've been working to promote this agenda of gender equality in education and advocate for girls' empowerment in and through education for this long time. And today we do face a different landscape. However, this mission remains the same. At the same time, while Ungai has been, we've grounded our work in the global commitments, in the MDGs, in the SDGs, I've come to see that in these early years, and even until quite recently, we did not fully see ourselves as feminists or as part of the feminist movement, or even claim our foundation in the Beijing Declaration in that platform for action. It seemed like somebody else's agenda. And that's sort of a reality check for Ungai, and very important for us to take on really with two hands. Now, as we prepared for the Generation Equality Forum, that has galvanized the gender and education community to embrace the centrality of education in the broad gender equality agenda. Those 6 themes which were identified, we've stepped right into those and really tried to see where education lands within those themes of, I'm going to say them again, economic justice and rights, climate action, feminist movements, technology and innovation, SRHR and gender-based violence, those big agendas. Well, education, through this work we've done over the last 6 months, has really reminded us of how central is education in advancing those agendas. And this week again, remind us of how much we know by calling on our partners to speak about the work they're doing, the real work they're doing in the field, and the expert work they're doing by bringing their thought leadership and their research and everything else, their advocacy, to understand and unpack and advance those agendas. And that's extremely rewarding for us to see ourselves as part of this movement, as part of the new agenda of this, what is now going to contribute to and complement the Beijing Platform for Action and Declaration as a new platform for action. So for Ungai and for all those who consider themselves friends and associated with the education and gender community, we're delighted to see what we have been able to achieve over the last number of months and together over this week, and recognize the huge mountain we must climb, and that we're not doing it alone. And that's probably the most important reminder, is the power of partnership. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Kudi in just a minute to say, and we're not doing it alone as the same community we were 5 years ago. We're a much bigger and more dynamic community because we have embraced youth activists as core leaders in this space. And with that, Kudi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nora, for this. And may I just say that it is such an honor to be having this conversation with you and everyone else. And can I also just say how powerful and real this conversation was? I really, really commend that. And I really love the kind of energy that we are giving off. You know, this is purely, truly an intergenerational conversation that we're having. So there have been some really, really beautiful talks happening and running through this week. And we have talked about 6 key fields that we are really moving into it. So I would say my closing remarks, I would just say that I would like to call to action that youth activists really, really need to be given the baton by the older generation. We need to be given the capabilities such as resources, and, you know, people such as Yona was really talking about this, and, you know, funding was really a key stroke within this conversation, and I really, really love this, you know. So I really am glad that we're having this conversation. We are talking and we are engaging and having an intergenerational talk amongst all of us. So 20 years from now, and Angai will be actually 40, and at that point in time I'll actually be 40 as well. It's very sad to think about that, but I really, really want to see a lot of action being taken. The commitments that have been made today alone, I will take it up myself to make sure that they are followed through. When it comes to policy making, let it not just stay there. Let it not just stay at writing a piece of sentence in a policy and, you know, just letting it be there and stay in Parliament. Let it be enforced. Let it be implemented. That is the key message that I would like to see everyone really put forth and, you know, move forward with it. So with that being said, I would like to hand over to Ms. Nora.
Well, all we have left to say is thank you. Thank you to everyone today who openly took on the challenge to step in life and exchange your real life in a real time. That's been fun and very powerful. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all of the partners who gave their open time and contribution to all the events that happened over the week. There have been so much work behind the scenes to make this possible. The video work, the interviewing work, you would not believe the amount of work that it took to put this all together. And yet, I thank all of those who contributed in their various ways, and those who are listening and who are taking notes and who now see a new opportunity to step into a different space or the same space with new energy and new commitments. And so we thank all of those who have been engaging by listening, by watching, and by making changes. So we appreciate that, and we honor your own space and how you will do this work with us and on your own. And we celebrate that partnership once again. Thank you all, and we're happy to bring this to an end.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.